A small factory of life floats in the immensity of the sea. Loaded with the power of photosynthetic pigments, this mangrove seed faces a long journey across the great blue, crossing entire oceans in its quest to conquer new lands in which to sow the seeds of life. Our story begins with this small, fertile traveler and its arrival in the Cuban archipelago, a land of still undiscovered nature, eclipsed by the beauty of its coral sea. Like this one, other mangroves too came from distant lands and created a fascinating little-known world. A jungle half above ground, half beneath water. An impenetrable maze where countless animals find refuge. The mangrove forest. Inside this strange world, life survives between extremes. There are excesses of salt, of humidity, and of heat, and every day it goes from droughts to floods, dictated by the tides. The fauna that has colonized it has had to overcome countless obstacles, and that has made it very much like the mangrove kingdom itself, just as rich, as unknown, and as dangerous. In this impassable world, a surprise lurks around every corner. Every animal is an enigma, and every shadow a potential danger. This complex labyrinth is the legacy of that intrepid seed which came across the immensity of the ocean. A fascinating paradise where life has remained untouched by man. A coral world surrounds the Cuban archipelago. Enormous coral structures, the result of thousands of years of patient calcareous construction, constitute the reefs which fill the coasts of Cuba with life. It is not a sea rich in nutrients, but protected by the corals, life multiplies in an explosion of biodiversity. The coral reef is composed of millions of tiny filtering polyps capable of turning the solar energy and the scarce nutrients in the water into organic material available for other organisms in the coral community. Starting with them, the chain becomes increasingly complex, and thousands of different life forms develop, from the fragile invertebrates to the most highly evolved complex fish. The tiny coral polyps join forces with the microscopic photosynthetic algae, which enable them to generate their external skeletons of calcium carbonate. When the polyps die, their skeletons remain, and on them settle millions of new polyps, creating layer upon layer, and so over countless generations, the coral reef is slowly constructed. In this calcareous world, each one occupies its own particular niche, and its role affects the rest of the community. It is not easy to find food in the world of the reef, and the only way to survive is to specialize. For these little wrasses picking about the skin of a moray eel, the solution meant an obvious risk, but they found their place by becoming cleaners of other fish. Despite their small size, the wrasses do not fear any of the fish in the reef. They all need them to remove the pesky parasites and impurities from their skin. So the different cleaner wrasses have permission to approach and touch the bodies of all of them, even the most ferocious-looking ones like this green moray. The gigantic coral structures that form the barrier reef also perform a protective function of enormous value for life. Like a natural breakwater, the coral skeletons slow down the impetuous sea breaking the waves. This gives rise to a strip of calm sea waters which extends from the reef to the beaches of the different Cuban islands. And here, between tranquility and turbulence, a number of factors come together, making the life of the mangrove possible. The coastal side of the barrier reef is a world of permanent peace. The water is clear and shallow, and the marine currents that gently filter through deposit the crushed remains of shells and corals, forming a bed of white sand. With good visibility and clear seabeds, many of the inhabitants of this strip choose camouflage to blend in with the sand and so hide from predators and remain invisible to potential prey. Others, like the rays and stingrays, prefer to bury themselves and wait for their prey beneath the sandy bottom, only their eyes peeking out. As we approach the coast, we come to our traveling seed's final destination, the main island of Cuba. Here, the seawater mixes with the fresh water of the rivers flowing from the interior of the island. With this mixture, there is an increase in nutrients and, in consequence, thousands of fish and invertebrates concentrate close to the surface. Finally, we come to the Mangrove Kingdom, the place where other traveling seeds struck land. It is the end of the journey of our seed and the beginning of our journey around one of the least known and most fascinating ecosystems in Cuba, the mangrove swamp. Though it is a coastal ecosystem, the substratum of the mangroves has its origins in the interior of the island. The dense jungles that cover the high regions of the interior retain the rainwater. This water gradually filters through the lateric soil of the jungles and forms rivers that descend and grow until they reach the sea.